there's definitely no ulterior motives. We will write stories that people don't agree with. That's part of the job. However, we're never ever in there just to try to catch someone out for a story. Okay, first question. Why is local journalism so important? I think when I'm asked this question, I often think about what would we have without local journalism. I think local newspapers, news brands, definitely question and scrutinise and call into account local authorities, Scottish governments, consider how all our monies are spent and if it's been spent in the right way, if the priorities are the right priorities. And I think without that, you wouldn't have that level of scrutiny. I think as well with local news brands, people are informed, a lot more informed than they would be without us. In terms of the relevant stories happening in their communities or happening in the region. So again, without local news, I definitely think people would not have as much readily available information as they have right now. I think as well as the scrutiny, we're absolutely here to champion our area, to celebrate success, to make people smile and laugh, as well as that kind of difficult, hard news as well. So yeah, we're here for a lot of different things, I believe, and we try our best to achieve those goals as well. How do you gauge success as a newspaper editor? I think as in any business, we all have our key metrics that we have to consider and live up to. And I think as a newspaper editor, we've got the traditional newspaper sales and now our digital subscription model that we have. So key budget targets that we have to hit. But I think alongside that now, it maybe wasn't as big a consideration previously is how your team operates and how you can help your team develop and consider the right way. So for me, culture and experimentation, moving on with different ideas, always looking forward. I think in a digital world, which we are in now, and especially in journalism, the future for journalism is going to be digital. You have to be looking at what's next, look at what's happening around the world rather than just being very insular. So I think that's a big one for me is looking to the future and bringing your team with you as well. What is the toughest story you've ever had to cover? So as a journalist, we have to cover an awful lot of bad news, unfortunately. And as a reporter, I've been in the industry for more than 20 plus years. I've definitely covered a lot of tragedy and heartbreaking stories, and I can remember speaking to parents when some young people have died in car crashes and whatnot, which has been really tough to do. Definitely when I was a younger journalist. I think the one that probably sticks out is the Super Puma disaster from the 1st of April 2009. And that was, we'd had an incident about 6 weeks earlier when a helicopter ditched in the North Sea, and thankfully everyone was okay. And there was this other incident on April 1st, and I remember being in the newsroom, and initially we heard about another incident, and everyone's initial response was that, we think it will be something similar to what happened 6 weeks ago. But I was news editor at the time, so I was responsible for all the reporters in the newsroom. But very quickly, I would say within 10 minutes, we got news that it was a wholly different incident, and it was a number of people had died, and we knew that very, very quickly. And I think that's the one moment I remember in my career in the newsroom where everyone just stopped, because at that time it was a very local incident and a huge tragedy. And everyone in that newsroom had friends or family who worked in the North Sea, so there was that moment of, do I know someone here myself that could be involved in that? So that was a tough one, but that was that immediate reaction, I think. And then afterwards we had a job to do, and we had an edition that went out within the hour to cover that as well, and that was a tough story to cover, but and a tough few days covering that as well. Which front page has been your favourite or stuck in your mind the most? From Evening Express, I can remember whenever there's an election or a referendum, you're focused on the local angle, but you're also trying to cut through with regards to the national press as well and be noticed for your front pages, because you can make a statement front page. And I remember the Brexit referendum that the Evening Express front page that day was in 2016 was Scotland votes in, UK votes out, ... Well, that was awkward, because I think that's what everyone was feeling at the time. So it kind of summed everything up, and it definitely made coverage across the UK from that perspective. More recently, I think slightly controversial one was in February this year when the P&J made took the unusual stance of having a slightly different front page from the norm, which was the traitors front page that we had, which was a number of the Labour politicians at the time, fantastic graphic designer that we had, used the television programme The Traitors and kind of had them designed up as the traitors. That was a statement front page for the P&J because it definitely was a departure from the norm. It's not something that we would traditionally do. The feeling was that we're hearing from the business community was that we were really frustrated with Labour, with their position, with their stance on the energy industry. They'd been up the year before, had said that any policy changes that would be made would be consulted on, they'd be spoken to, and then what happened was they came out with a policy proposal that nobody knew about and no one had been consulted about. So it was a bit risky, although it was a play on words clearly with the BBC television programme. But as I say, it was a real departure from the norm for the P&J. It got widespread reaction. It got discussed in Holyrood through First Minister questions. It was on national television. It did upset some people as well in terms of the wording, the terminology, but it was a real departure. But it was a one-off. That's not what the P&J does traditionally. So that, for me, was the impact that it had on that day. So it was very, very different. And I think just looking nationally very, very quickly, one that stands out for me is the Daily Mail front page with regards to the Stephen Lawrence murder, when they came out after a number of years and said that these guys were murderers, without there being any court case or conviction. And it really sparked, action from the police to look into this case further. So that was a real risk from the editor at the time, and it clearly, it paid off with regards to the action that came afterwards. What is the toughest decision you've had to make in your career? I think probably in an editorial sense, the toughest decision was not to write a story. We challenge each other, as I say, and we have a lot of discussion and debate around how we present a story, how we write the story, and on this occasion, this particular story, I won't go into the specific details, but there was a crime, there was a victim, and we spent an awful lot of time, more time than I've ever done before in my career, discussing that story and the benefits of the story, and were we legally safe to write that story? Yes, we were. We were within the rules of IPSO, our body that ensures that we do the right things. Yes, we definitely were. But I think it came down to, was it the right thing in terms of the public interest to write that story and the impact it could have had on an individual? And it's a very unusual step and one that we've never taken before in my time, but we made the decision not to publish that story. And that was, as I say, a really, really tough decision on that front. What is the best piece of advice someone has ever given you? Never be afraid to ask for help. Previously, or some people might still think this, that if you ask for help, it's a sign of weakness. I actually think it's a sign of strength, that if you feel need assistance, you should absolutely ask for it. There's no point struggling on your own. So that was one key bit of advice I was given, probably when I initially started as a manager. And another one, which comes from journalism, was there's no such thing as a stupid question. I think if you don't know, you don't know, so you should ask. Doesn't matter if you think that the person you're asking the question thinks it's stupid. It's the way you're going to understand, or as a journalist, it's the only way you're going to be able to write your story. Toughest question so far: who would be your ideal 3 dinner guests? I think first of all it would be an off-the-record dinner. I think it would be clear with individuals that, as a journalist, that they can say what they want, because that's what I would need to make it a great dinner party. And I'd probably have to have someone like Billy Connolly for laughs. I think it'd be fantastic to have in that kind of environment. I'm a big sport fan, so I think there's a lot of different people I could have there, but I would say Andy Murray. I think very inspirational, fantastic achievements in what he's done in tennis, but also inspirational from what he's achieved after his injuries and what he's gone through. So and I do think he's got a dry sense of humour that some people don't get, but I think he would still be quite entertaining as well. And a little bit maybe left field one here. I think I'm going for someone who's not with us anymore, but probably Queen Elizabeth II. I think someone who's been the head of a monarchy for so long must have some fantastic stories. Final question here. Biggest misconceptions about your work. So this is something actually that does play on my mind quite a bit. I think people have a perception of what a journalist is and what they try to do and what they try to achieve. And I think quite often that conception is that we're just out to get people. I think people feel that, and people might clam up from time to time when you're talking to them, or say in a jokey way, you can't report that, you won't report that, when you're not in the work environment as well. I do remember being at a barbecue many years ago, and the person I met for the first time turned around and said to me, "What is it you do for a job?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a journalist," and they just walked away. They didn't even engage in conversation and didn't speak to me for the rest of that evening. No big deal, I suppose, but it kind of something that stuck with me from that point of view. But I think definitely from a local journalism point of view, we all live in the area, we're all invested in the area, we all want our area to prosper and to improve and the best for us. So there's definitely no ulterior motives. We will write stories that people don't agree with. That's part of the job. However, we're never ever in there just to try to catch someone out for a story. So that for me is definitely the biggest misconception for journalism. But I think that's me done. I think that's all the questions. So thanks for listening.